September. It's about being a kind of master of ceremonies, otherwise known as a moderator, mostly of nationally televised presidential and vice presidential debates. I've moderated 11 of those delightfully hairy events, and I have the psychic scars deep down throughout my soul to show for all of the 11. My book is about my experiences as a moderator, but also I interviewed most of the presidential and vice presidential candidates about their experiences with these debates, and I interviewed them over a period of 20 years. And the title Tension City comes from something that former President George H.W. Bush told me when I was asking him about, what those debates were like. And he said, those big time things, oh, it was Tension City, Jim. So that's where I got the title. Smart, huh? Right? Anyway, my own description of what it was like to be a moderator for all of these debates, my analogy is, and it's in the book, is walking carefully down the blade of a very sharp knife. One little push here, there, or whatever, and you can get cut and hurt very badly. In the book, I tell the story of the so-called killer question in which George W. Bush was involved. It was in a 1988 debate with Michael Dukakis, when the moderator, Bernard Shaw of CNN, asked Dukakis, I'm sure many of you will remember this, Governor, if Kitty Dukakis were raped and murdered, would you favor an irrevocable death penalty for the killer? Irrevocable, by the way. Death penalty for the killer. And as many of you may recall, Dukakis began his answer very calmly, ever so calmly, with, quote, no, I don't, Bernard, and I think you know that I've been opposed to the death penalty during all my life. He went on to explain his intellectually based opposition to capital punishment, and according to the punditry at the time, he went on to lose the election because of that. There's an interesting backstory about the question itself. It involves the efforts of his fellow journalists, panelists, all three being women journalists, to persuade Bernie Shaw behind the scenes not to ask that question. The bottom line I discovered in doing my research is that famous and distinguished journalists of this world are no different than real people. They also see and hear the same thing in different ways, as you will see. I also tell the whole story of the famous 27 minutes when in 1976 the audio went dead in the debate between Jimmy Carter and Gerald Ford, the debate in Philadelphia. Ford and Carter, and the audio went dead, as you may recall. Ford and Carter, one stood at one podium, the other stood at the other podium, and they both just stood there silently for 27 minutes. They tried to fix the audio. They didn't speak to one another. They didn't even look at each other. Edwin Newman, who was the moderator, offered them a chair, and Newman said afterward, not only did they not sit down, they did not even acknowledge that I had suggested it. So, I interviewed both Ford and Carter about all of that, and both admitted it was a true embarrassment. Carter said, I think, quote, I think to some degree it let the American people size up the candidates, and I don't think either one of us made any points on that deal. And that was really true. The incident was one of many through the years when points were made, decisive points were made, in a debate that had nothing to do with what was said by the candidates with their words. It was what they said with their body language. First televised debate, Kennedy-Nixon, 1960. It was Nixon's appearance that lost that debate and won it for Kennedy. Those who listened to that on the radio thought Nixon was the winner, but those on television did not think so. The 2000 debate in Boston between Al Gore and George W. Bush is another example. I moderated that one. That was the famous sign debate, which showed Gore, every time Bush would answer a question, Gore would grimace and sigh and all that sort of stuff in the reaction shots. And it it showed Gore in a way that the voters didn't like. And the polls after that debate, before that debate, they were neck and neck, and after that debate, Gore fell behind and pretty much stayed behind from that point on. In my case, here I was the closest person to those two candidates. But I have a rule: I always look at the person who's speaking, not at the person who's listening, because I didn't want to be part of any kind of reaction. So when the debate was over, we were walking out of the hall. I was walking out of the hall with my family when my daughter said, "Oh, Dad, that was something what Gore did, wasn't it?" And I stopped and said, "What did Gore do? What are you talking about?" And she told me about the sign. I had completely missed it, and I was the closest one to it. You could say the same thing on the body language between the first McCain-Obama debate in 2008. It was in Oxford, Mississippi. I also moderated that one. You may recall, McCain would not look at Obama. He would not address any questions to Obama directly. And that's despite the pleas of the delightfully charming moderator to get him to do that. He just wouldn't do it. And here again, he came over in a negative way to a lot of people. He seemed fidgety, he seemed nervous, he seemed angry. While Obama, on the other hand, was more than willing to look at McCain and address the questions and do all of that. And so he came over as calm and cool. And here again, Obama took the lead after that debate, and he never lost it after that. Bottom line here, which I have certainly concluded, is that voters watch presidential debates to take the measure of the full measure of a candidate in ways that sometimes have absolutely nothing to do with what a candidate thinks about a particular issue. They want to know whether he or she is likable, how he or she might act when the unexpected happens, when there is another 9/11, another Katrina, or something like that. It has to do more with personality, because by the time these debates happen, remember, there are usually only 2 or 3 weeks to go before the election, and most people have already made up their minds, and they're leaning. And so what they're really looking for is, who is this person? And that's what they're looking for more than they are what the position is on Social Security or whatever. I also have some points in the book about just some general comments about interviewing and moderating, all kinds of things. And I talk about the need to do homework and preparation. A lot of people think it's so you can write really terrific questions. No, that's not it at all. You do your homework so you'll be relaxed enough to listen to the answers. And my example always is, I'm interviewing a senator, and I say, "Senator, do you think we should sell more grain to Cuba?" "Yes, Jim, I think we should sell more grain to Cuba, but before we do that, we should bomb Havana." And I say, "What kind of grain, Senator?" Because that was a question I had written down. And, you have to guard against that. Everybody